Right behind my head is my entry into this year's Great Guitar Build-Off Invitational Charity Competition. I can't wait to show it to you. I'm going to show you how I made it in just a minute, but I wanted to put up right at the top. First, if you don't know what the Great Guitar Build-Off is, there's a link in the description. And if you are interested in winning this guitar, it's all for charity. And in my case, all the proceeds from my sale will go to benefit the World Central Kitchen. There's a raffle that is taking place at the greatguitargiveaway.com. Go there. You got until January 23rd. But without further ado, let me show you what I did, and I'll recap at the end. Hey, it's me, Tim, and I am back for the Great Guitar Build-Off this year. I did it last year. It was a ton of fun. If you remember, I made like a double neck, and my whole thing was to use every scrap of wood that was sent to me in the Crimson Guitars kit. And so this year, I had the pleasure of meeting Ben in person at Maker Central, and he asked me personally to do it again this year, and how could you say no to a face like that? So of course I did. And yes, Ben is as awesome in person as he appears to be on YouTube. I can tell you that for a fact. He sent me the kit. It's lovely, and this year I was sent a bunch of hardware with it as well. Everybody in the Invitational has to use the same kit, is my understanding. For a project that I ended up not using them. I had bought these Steinberger style tuning keys. I don't know if you're familiar with these, but basically they go into a headstock like this, and they look kind of cool. And I was going to use them for this project, but then I got the kit and Ben had sent me all this hardware, and then that gave me an idea. This is the body blank that Ben sent me. It's a beautiful piece of ash, and a nice piece of ash. And you can see it's actually like really, really thick. It's 1.8 inches thick, just about, which is, you know, a lot of guitars are that thick because, you know, they get carved away and sculpted. But for me, I make my guitars around usually about an inch, a little over an inch and a quarter, like 1.3, 1.35 inches thick. I like them smaller and lighter. So this to me is like huge. And then I had this idea because, like I mentioned, I had these tuners that don't match the tuners that Ben sent me, but I was like, well, that's okay. I was thinking, well, what if I made it like two guitars in one, kind of like I did last year, but instead of putting like two separate instruments, what if I made two instruments stacked on top of each other, which of course made me think about a 12 string. So I have Ben's neck with his tuners that'll go here, but then I can take and put these Steinberger tuners here, and I can get myself a nice little sort of 12 string setup going there, right? Just messing around, proof of concept. And I came up with the idea of stacking two bodies on top of each other. So I was going to take like one of my designs, like a pretty generic single cutaway type design that I have, but then put another guitar on top of it. Bought this 12 string bridge. I'm going to mix and match the hardware a little bit, so it'll be stacks of black and chrome. I'll do the bodies in contrasting colors that are two together, but it'll just be one 12 string guitar, but it'll almost look like someone took two 6 string guitars and shoved them together. Make sense? You may or may not know this about me, but I have a CNC machine, therefore I am not a real woodworker, obviously. And last year I didn't use the CNC machine to make this project because the blank's already sort of set up. But I thought because I want to do the stacked body thing, using the CNC would be a lot easier for me. So my plan is take this block of wood, strap it down to my CNC, and then use a pencil or something to check some of these references and make sure I have it perfectly aligned. And then once I have it perfectly aligned, I can screw it down to my workbench, and then I can go and I can start doing all of my work, and I'll be able to flip it and everything will line up right, because I can't just willy-nilly put this down and have things not line up right. This is the kind of stuff I like to do. I like to experiment and try new things and come up with new systems and procedures, and I haven't really ever tried this, so today I'm gonna. Isn't that what the GGBO is all about? I do all my designing in Vectric software, and I drew Ben's guitar blank into a blank file, and I was thinking about the Vox Phantom 12 string of the 1960s. I thought that'd be a fun shape to sort of reference. I couldn't do it exactly the same, but I dropped that on top of my frontman guitar design, and I thought that looked pretty cool. I also added a center dot right there. So now I can take this piece of cardboard, and you see it's not perfect, but it's awful darn close. I can line it all up, and I marked that spot right there with a little dot. And center this board on my CNC. Then before I screw it down, once I think I have it centered, I'm going to go in and I'm going to draw these dots and see how far off I am. And it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, it just has to be close. Otherwise my guitar might look crooked or something. I figured I could just drag this Sharpie marker and see if it lined up with one of the holes, and that would be enough. But what I forgot to do was properly turn off the spinning motor of my CNC router. Okay, I had the spindle set to rotate at 1 revolution per minute because I couldn't type in 0, but apparently that was wrong, and I let it keep going because I thought that looked awesome. I'm glad I filmed that. I couldn't figure out how to turn my Avid CNC spindle to just spin 1 or 0 revolutions per minute, so I just unplugged it and ran the file like that, and I could use that to line up my block. Once I was satisfied that it was lined up enough, I started to do my cutting, and it was a little bit tricky to figure out how to cut everything so these two parts would overlap. I created these alignment holes that I will drill into my wasteboard in reverse so I can then line this all up and make sure my top and back are aligned. This trick helps with alignment, but I was also just trying to figure out which side to cut which part and everything. And obviously to make this instrument this way, it would be much, much easier to cut 2 separate bodies out, you know, and then paint them and glue them together. But since I'm working with this kit, I had to do it this way. Well, this all worked according to plan, which is pretty exciting. So we have the 2 guitars stacked on each other. It's a little annoying right now that there's all these spots here because it's just sort of distracting to look at, but it doesn't matter for the project because I was actually planning on painting this, which I very rarely do, but that is again sort of the spirit of the GGBO, is to try and do some new stuff, at least for me. This is the 12-string bridge that I bought. I'm going to have to shim this neck so I can get a little bit of angle on it to pretty close to the edge of the fingerboard here at the top. This neck is just not quite wide enough for it. Then if we go to the second one, we can see it's actually like really pretty perfect. So what I might have to do is carve another notch closer. And it does seem to be worse on the high end, which is good because the strings are tighter there, and so I have a little more room to play with where on the lowers, and I might need to really space them out. So there's going to be a little bit of messing around to turn this into a 12-string, but I think it's going to work. And the reason I went with this style bridge is because I have this really cool tailpiece and string holder that we're going to be talking about later. I designed a special tailpiece that would hold my 12 strings and run them through the body, but also cover the pre-existing holes that are in the body that I'm not going to use. Right now I'm just making a shim out of some closet door material to angle the neck the way I want so it'll work with that other style tune-o-matic bridge, and seemed to work good. I got the guess right on the first try. Perfect. This was the part that I was most nervous about, was figuring out the best way to line up the second set of tuners and have room and make sure the strings are all going to cross over right. And really at the end of the day I just had to sort of take a leap of faith, but I used the existing holes as reference to then transfer the other 6 holes on, and I figured I'd just drill 1 and see if it looked like it was going to work okay, because if it didn't, there would be only 1 hole to plug in and fix instead of 6. I think that'll work. Go ahead and do them all. I reached the point where I just had to jump in and do it, so I drilled all my holes, being careful to drill a pilot hole first so I could drill from both sides and make sure I didn't have any tear out, and then I started to design my headstock shape. So I'm going to cut this sort of Vox shape like the top instrument I'm creating, and then I'm going to add this sort of shape that's reminiscent of my inline 6 headstock, and then fill that. We'll do the black and white kind of thing going on up here too. I just made it a little extra big just to make sure it would fit. I think that'll work. I think I cut this first, route it, glue this in after I paint. I made that little joke about not being a real woodworker because I have a CNC, and I never understood that mentality. As you can see, most of my day is spent doing stuff like this. The CNC is just another tool in my shop. My grandfather was a Finnish carpenter, and if someone came up to him and said, "Hey, I can help you make all that molding with this CNC machine," I don't think he would have said, "No thanks, I'll just keep using my hand planes." I'm pretty sure he would have jumped at the opportunity. Because I work with reclaimed wood, I tend to show it. I have very little experience with painting, and what I thought I'd do is try to do a little bit of a grain fill on the top Vox piece and make that look like a professional paint job, but then have the back be more like an open pour paint job so it would look more like the work coming out of my shop. I openly admit that the paint job on this guitar is its weakest link. It was difficult to paint the 2 different colors and mask it well. I couldn't really get as crisp of a line as I wanted, and I'm also just an inexperienced painter using rattle cans, so I wish I could have done a better job on that. Like I said, if I were to make this design from scratch, I would have made these 2 pieces separate and then glued them together. But again, for me, the point of the GGBO is to try new things and experiment and push the art form in and myself into some new directions that maybe I wouldn't have tried if it weren't for this competition. And it's all for charity, so there's an opportunity here for a lot of people to own some very unique and special guitars, and do some good at the same time. All the proceeds from my part of this year's build-off will go to World Central Kitchen, which is a fantastic organization that just solves a simple problem of feeding people at times of need. I can't think of a better thing to do than that. And I am certain that they are better at their job than I am at painting guitars. The first idea I had was to use this Stuart Semple Black 3.0 paint on the top surface or on the black surface as part of that contrast between glossy and flat and black and white, and then paint the back with a more traditional gloss black to protect it better from belt buckle rash. Well, I think the idea worked. I've got a pretty nice, gloss black there. I've got it, cream white under here, and then just flat black. It worked good, but it's like a little bit too complicated for me, I think. So I think I'm just going to, before I untape this, I'm just going to spray the gloss on top of the flat and give up on that idea. We'll still have plenty of contrast. I'm afraid it's going to get too smudgy too fast and stuff. Again, the learning process for me, and I could see that the tape I used was not good enough to get that crisp of a line that I wanted to get. There's a little bit of bleeding there. So I had to do some touch-ups with a brush along that edge. And I got it to look okay, but it's definitely not 100%. And now I just have to put all the pieces together and make it actually work like a guitar. What could possibly go wrong? This was definitely the most stressful part, trying to figure out, A, how to use these tuners I'd never used before, and just starting to worry about how the strings are going to go across the nut and whether this was all going to work okay. So busy up there. This is a new toy I recently got into my workshop. It's a Thunder Laser 20-watt fiber laser, which I can etch and engrave metal with. Now, I have a Thunder Laser 100-watt CO2 laser that is honestly the backbone of my workshop, and so I was excited to add this new technology, and I thought I'd show it off a little bit here in my Great Guitar Build-Off build by just putting a custom logo on this neck plate. This is one of the first things I've done with it, and right now the laser is running in real time. I'll speed it up to make the video happen faster, but these things do go really, really fast, and I'm still dialing it all in. There'll be more content about it coming up in the future on my YouTube channel. In case you haven't noticed, I'm carrying the two guitars smooshed together theme all the way through the hardware by mixing and matching black and chrome hardware, and even the screws that I'm using to hold in these Wilkinson humbucker pickups that came with the GGBO kit. Since the kit I started with was designed for 6 strings through the body and I needed to put 12 through, I had to find a way to hide those pre-existing holes and then create a plate to hold the strings myself. And so I designed this in my original file, and I had it cut from stainless steel by sendcutsen.com. And by the way, 15 sway all the way will save you 15% on anything you want to get cut there at sendcutsen.com. And then I used my Thunder Laser to engrave it with the my logo and the GGBO 2022 thing, since I have this new technology and I'm learning how to use it. I made 2 plates, one for the top and then one slightly larger for the back to cover the holes on both sides and run the strings through the body. And then on my 100-watt CO2 laser, also from Thunder Laser, I cut out arrows to put inside those holes from acrylic. Black acrylic for the white front and white acrylic for the black back. It's a little tricky getting the strings through, and I had to edit a couple of the holes to get them to sit just right, but it all works out pretty good. You just gotta, take your time. I'm just starting to make sense of this spaghetti up here, and I was hoping to do like a matching set for each string, like E, A, D, but then we start running the problems with the strings crossing over, so the best thing to do, it seems, is to do E, A, and D here, and then G, B, and E here, so that way we only have the D strings kind of push up against some of these tuners to get to those last 2 things, but that won't be a problem underneath the nut, and then they all just sort of line up nice here. So there's just one sort of awkward string here, but it's not too bad. I also found with these Steinberger type tuners, it's best to really pull the string pretty tight before you lock it in to give you more range of tuning. So I just use a pair of pliers to help me do that. Hindsight being 2020, I probably could have put the Steinberger tuners in a slightly different position, maybe a little bit further away from the other ones, because the way the strings go on them, they don't wrap around, they just go right through the center. I use my center finding tool called the Center Square, as well as my Fret Rocker's other functionality to help me figure out how to carve out my nut. Both of these tools are available at squaretools.com, and for the rest of the year 2022, the code Support Plaid Friday will save you 10% off anything you purchase there. And I think now it's time to hear it. I enjoyed this one and I learned a lot. I liked that I had some other restrictions that were put on me besides the normal restrictions I put on myself, because, you know, limitations fuel creative solutions, and that's a big part of my process. So in this case, I had to find creative solutions for creating these two bodies out of one block of wood that was already pre-routed, and I think I came up with a pretty good solution that worked well. Of course, I would do it differently if I were just doing a design like this from scratch, and it would be a lot easier to get the paint job better if I did it that way, but since I was forced with what I have, I did the best I could with what I got. And the paint job isn't bad. It's not great, but it's not bad, and I think it does the job. We get the contrast, we get the look that I was going for. So I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. And I just love the idea of like the smushing two guitars together and making it a 12 string. I've never even thought of making a 12 string before, and now I have a feeling I'm going to make some more of them. So the Great Guitar Build-Off is all done for bragging rights and charity. So as far as the bragging right goes, this year there's an academy that is doing some kind of vote. I'm not really sure how that works, and I really am not too interested in that. What I am interested in is that this guitar is available for raffle over at greatguitargiveaway.com, and so you can buy a ticket for that for 6 weeks. The winner is going to be announced on January 24th. You have until a few days before then to make bids on this, and as well as the other guitars that are in it, you could potentially own it, and all of that money is going to go to charitable foundations. And in my case, the money raised from selling this guitar will benefit the World Central Kitchen, and I'm really happy and honored to make another contribution to them. I have personally made many contributions to them over the years, and I encourage you to do so as well. But man, raffling off guitars to help, that's a win-win, right? You can go to thegreatguitarbuildoff.com to learn more about the Great Guitar Build-Off. There's a lot of different ways of entering and levels of entry. It's all done for, you know, for fun and for charity, and just the sake of creativity, which I think is just as valuable. And you might want to join next year. Who knows? I don't know if I'll be a part of it again. I'm glad to be back again this year, and I had a blast doing it for the past 2 years. I hope you enjoyed as well. Thank you all very much. Be good, and go bid on some really cool, unique guitars. I mean, like a 12-string. Like, everybody wants a 12-string, but nobody wants to buy a 12-string. Here's an opportunity to get one for like a song, right? Be good.